Today we will share the introduction to BIM Execution Planning, or BEPs. Our agenda for today will cover why do we need a BEP, what to include in it, how to get the team engaged, get agreements, and continuously improve the BEP process. Now, firstly, why do we need a BEP? All right, so what happens when we don't plan? We end up having multiple teams, especially if it's a big project, with a lot of confusion. Is it a 6? Is it a 9? We also end up with teams blaming each other and a lot of finger pointing. Over here, we have some statistics from the PMI, the Project Management Institute, that clearly show that the main reason for failure on a project is due to poor communication, insufficient planning, unrealistic expectations. So the top 3 basically are mostly related to things we can plan for. We looked into something called project maturity levels, and we sort of mapped that into the lean philosophy of plan, do, check, and then act. Now, level 1 is your ad hoc, so nothing formal, very sporadic, lots of confusion and blame. Level 2 is your planned. You start to have some kind of operational standard, but inconsistently managed. Third level is the managed level, organizational standards, but irregularly followed. And then we start as we start to integrate into a workflow, we start checking to have metrics in place, and we start to check the performance across our company. Then the final phase is when you start to act on that. You only then start to hit that continuous improvement cycle. You have sustained performance and start to evaluate your decisions based on past performance so that you can influence your future decisions. And that's really where we are trying to get to. Okay, that was some good project management speak, but what are we actually planning? What are we planning for? With BIM, there are many users, but to reduce your risk, you must align your BIM users. For example, using more detailed coordination with BIM for complex design projects. Or if you have concerns on project cost, you could choose to use the BIM to generate more accurate quantities more quickly so that you stay informed of the impact of design updates. Or if your facilities require more data to run them, make sure that the data can be more accurate and more useful by using the model. You've got to identify the main risks and use BIM to help you eliminate these risks. Here are some models that could align with some of those users. Some of these are some examples of a typical project lifecycle, from design to coordination, all the way to facilities management. Because we can use BIM for so many things, let's do everything, right? Well, no, that's probably not the best strategy. A targeted approach is always the best. However, along with the excitement of the opportunity to do BIM, for so many reasons, it can be confusing. With so many potential benefits from BIM, sometimes the process is set up for failure from the start. Here we see a contract from an owner with very poorly defined requirements. Broad or undefined requirements like this do not help teams deliver the value expected. LOD 400 with COBie, undefined, impossible to deliver. But what they're really asking for is good, fast, and cheap. So just having a request for LOD 400 and a BIM guide to deliver. And you can't have all 3. If you want it good and cheap, it won't be fast. If you want it fast and good, it won't be cheap. Cheap and fast won't be good. You can only pick 2 of these. So that's why we need a BEP, in order to define the BIM users and requirements. But what do we need to include in there once we've identified these BIM users? Here are some typical categories for the types of content in your BIM execution plan. Maybe starting with an introduction of why we are doing BIM in the first place, on this project specifically, through the BIM users. Processes to follow, standards to reference, tech to support, formats to deliver, terms to comply with, and the scope for each participant. Very important. A BIM execution plan should include everything from project information to teams, team members and their contact details, even some links out to other web applications that the project needs to use. The introduction can be different based on the team's knowledge of BIM. Some projects might need to have a very robust mission statement and definition of why we are even starting to adopt BIM. Or it might be further along. It might be training introductions. Others might be much more detailed into the processes and understanding of how they are going to deliver. You got to define the BIM users, define the customer, align the services with capabilities. Which processes do you need in order to achieve those BIM users? Do you need to explain in a flow diagram how to create some deliverables? And then, are you following certain standards? Are you following the ISO standards, the ISO 19650 perhaps? Define the terminology so that everyone on the project speaks the same language. For example, what is an asset information model, and how will you ensure that the model is created, is fit for this purpose? How do you standardize it? How will you support this with the right technology? How will you manage software versions? How will you define your information requirements and your handover? Essentially, the format that you are looking for, and we recommend open BIM standards and IFC as a transfer mechanism. Remember, the BEP needs to be a contract, and you can add a signature block so that you can actually get everyone's signatures. So scope, probably the most important part of the BIM execution plan is the scope. You want to align what scope is needed, who is responsible, how much of information is needed, what are the BIM users. Having a clear scope helps everyone on a project. That's great. We now know why we need it and what needs to be included, but how do we get the team engaged? This is the common workflow. So create a file, potentially a PDF file, email that to the team, try to collect feedback. However, there are many challenges, ranging from the sharing of comments through dozens of emails, which can be confusing and challenging to aggregate, to the simple question of who even has the latest BEP, who has agreed to it. The result can be large documents. It's a time-consuming process, and we hear about teams not being able to adopt it and potentially being more confused. So when you ask what happened to the BIM execution plan, did you get that? I sent it via email. Have they seen it? Did they read it? So how do we engage the team? A few tips. Create a central hub. Project information, contact details, etc. Having it all in one place makes it easier for everyone, and let them update it rather than you having to update everyone else's contact details. How about making it simple? How about making it a workflow and using a diagram, being able to visualize those standards and processes, making it more attractive, maybe for people to get into? Engage your team. Be able to get that feedback, create it together so that it feels less mandated and more of a team effort. Use video content. It's better than a whole 5-page set of text people are potentially not even going to read. Sometimes you can really save a huge amount of pages or paper by just using videos. Just a 1 or 2 minute video on how to maybe model something in Revit or use clash detection in Navisworks, etc. And use rich content in the form of flowcharts and embed those so that they are interactive, so that people can view them. It will be easy to search and navigate information within sections. Also, standards or processes are more clear due to using the rich content that is your videos, your images, iframes, flowcharts. And so even when we do have a BEP, with everything we need to include in it, and we do get the team engaged, how do we get agreement? Some of the challenges pertaining to the agreement are the way the document was created was in a very isolated form. It's difficult for people to agree on it because it's a single file in a single place most of the time. It's also difficult to get feedback because once the document is created, they send it to, say, 10 people on the team. That means that you need to get feedback from 10 people. Gather that information, update the content because it's such a large document. You have this bottleneck of the items you need to update, and it takes time to actually end up with an agreed document. So we see the best results when we take bite-sized releases of information. So taking a section of the document and publishing or sharing it, and only seeing and controlling the amount of content you want them to see. That would give someone who is reviewing your workflow enough of the document to be able to comment, and comment precisely on that section, rather than to review 100 pages in a PDF that was sent via email. It simply becomes like a comment that you can add like on social media. Leave a comment, provide feedback, and then get notified of that feedback. So updates now would take minutes and not days. You want your BEP to be always up to date and accessed online, to have built-in commenting and approval workflow, which helps progress approval by section. You want your BEP to be able to collaborate, and updates should be continued throughout the project. Also, it should be a live document, but you also want to be able to archive it as a PDF and lock or share the link with others is a very important feature. Now, how to continuously improve your BEP? A lot of the time, we just copy the BEP from a previous project and use it on the new one, which is evil. Well, usually what that does is it creates many challenges, and here are just a few of them. Copy and paste can carry unrealistic expectations into another project. Think about all the project-specific information that you just copied over, and now it's a lot of admin to go and pinpoint all the relevant information and sections to the new project. Pinpoint what is relevant and what isn't. And the implications of those challenges are it's not lean, creates bottleneck, creates misunderstandings, confusion, and blame. And there's a lot of risk in that workflow. So a few tips: you need to figure out what is the general information from project to project, what is consistent, and make those templates. So you save a lot of time creating a BEP, because now you're just adding in project-specific information. You also need to get your team involved, and you're also not just mandating certain workflows, but rather making sure everyone in the team agrees to it and can update it. And having all that in a single location really makes updating it an easier, quicker process. Create a competitive advantage. How do you become that level 5 sustained, being able to use lessons learned and create best practices in that continuously improving loop? How do you evaluate future decisions on past performance to make you awesome? So in conclusion, we have just shared a few insights on how to improve that BIM execution planning workflow. The first one was understanding why you are doing BIM. Have a plan tied to your BIM users. Know what to include. Don't forget the scope. Use templates with engaging, rich content. Have a continuous release and review cycle. Some resources to help your BIM team grow. Follow this link to get more information on Planoly. And you can book your masterclass accreditation sessions with us now as well. And please join us for our next webinar in the series, episode 3. How do you contract for the right BIM at the right time?